talks about in verse 32, and what more shall I say? I don't have time to tell you about Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, the prophets through whose faith conquered kingdoms, administered justice, who gained what was promised, who shut the mouths of lions. Can you picture that? Your faith shutting the mouths of lions. Who quenched the fury of the flames, escaped the edge of the sword, whose weakness was turned to strength, who became powerful in battle and routed foreign armies. Women received back their dead, raised to life again. And then it goes on to say that others were tortured, refused to be released. Some faced jeers and flogging, while others, they were put in prison. Some, it says, that were sawn in two for their faith. Some put to death by the sword. It says that the world, it wasn't worthy of them. They were destitute, persecuted, mistreated. They wandered in deserts and mountain caves and holes in the ground. They gave it up for their faith. Man, if I could just live like them, I would have something together. But then it says in verse 39, they were all commended for their faith. Then it says, yet none of them received what had been promised. You mean they went through all this and didn't receive what has been promised? Have you ever known what it's like to not receive what has been promised? Have you ever just felt the feeling of not receiving what God promised you? It's like when you come down to the altar and you begin to give all the money you have and you plant and you sow and say, God, someday I'm going to have a victory from what I'm giving. God, I sow into this ministry. And every week you sow, but then you go back home and you start shouting in your living room because you know God's about to bring a blessing. And then that next week, the bills pile up higher than the week before. It's when finally you've been praying for your whole marriage that you could have children, but the doctors tell you you can't. And then finally, out of nowhere, God brings a miracle baby inside your womb. But then in the 9th month, they tell you that your baby's dead. Have you ever known what it's like to not receive your promise? It's like that son or daughter that you raised up in church right next to you, listening to every sermon that had. And finally, when it's the moment for them to become who God called them to be, they walk away from God and walk into the enemy's hands. To not receive your promise. It's like when God finally heals you of your sickness and you're shouting. Then a few weeks later, it comes back even stronger. See, I'm here to tell you, the great news is, though, the verse did not end there. The verse went further. Can we read on? It says they didn't receive their promise. But verse 40 changed the story. Because it said God had planned something better for us, that only together with us would they be made perfect. Point number one, when God has planned, you can guarantee that at that moment when the promise didn't come, he wasn't scrambling for an answer or searching for an antidote. You can guarantee when God had planned, nothing can stop it or anyone can't touch it. You can guarantee when God had planned, your financial situation can't impede it. Your insecurities cannot bring it to an end. No nation, no kingdom, no king can make it stand still. When God had planned, no sickness can prevent it. All of hell can't discontinue it. When God had planned, lack of faith can't stop it. When God had planned, my emotions, my circumstances can't block it. When God had planned, no relationship, no family member can bring it to a halt. The grave couldn't hold it, and death couldn't keep it. When God had planned, God had planned. God does not react, he simply acts. God is not trying to play catch up with the devil in your life. He formed you before you were known in your mother's womb. This is why I have to begin to get God's plan in me. This is why what you say I am. I gotta get this in my mind. I gotta get this in my heart. It's gotta fuel me. I gotta get with his plan before I get with people's plans. I gotta listen to his voice more than I listen to your voice, because God said I am more than a conqueror. You see, when you realize that the word stops the naysayers in my life, it stops the boxes that people try to trap me in. See, I don't have to line up to how I feel for the day. The devil has to line up to what I've been taught. You see, the Bible says I'm more than a conqueror. That's why in my trials, in my circumstances, I can shout. Because you know what a conqueror is? A conqueror is a man who rides out with a great army, a whole fleet of horses. He rides out with a shield, an amazing sword. That's what a conqueror is. But my word doesn't just say I'm a conqueror. My word says I'm more than a conqueror. You know what more than a conqueror is? It's when I don't have a shield. I don't even own a horse. I don't know how to fight. But I walk out to the battle and I meet my army and I meet my Philistines and I take them out. I am more than a conqueror. It's not by what I see, but by what he said that changes my situation. God had planned. The cool thing is that the verse does not stop there. It gets better. God had planned something better for us, that only together with us would they be made perfect. Do you get who you are? Do you understand what God spoke about you? He's saying that the heroes of faith, that if you could just hang out with them, they'd mess you up. Those heroes of faith, they were the first part of the story, and I'm the last. They were the beginning of the race, and I'm the finish. They had the first part of the baton, and they're handing me the second. I am the finish to what they started. The first part of the word was written, and it was powerful, but God's writing the last through me. I am a part of the story. Every great believer realized one thing, that their body housed the living God.